They weren't falling from the sky. They aimed for it. And they did a very good job. The Trade Center is torn open. There's a hole in the south side of the Trade Center, torn open from the impact of the plane, which fell into the street below.
Would that be the westernmost of the two towers?
The southernmost of the two towers.
Southernmost of the two towers.
Yes, yes. It's a big gaping hole in it. Flames and smoke have been pouring out since it happened about 5 minutes ago. I'm a little shaken because I saw the plane pass before my eyes. It was just about at my eye level. So.
How close to you?
A block and a half.
You say you saw the first plane fall down.
Yeah.
We're re-racking tape here, by the way, and I'm speaking to you, Mr. Schneider, but I'm showing tape right here of the second plane boring into the northernmost of the two towers. You say you saw the first plane fall down. What can you tell me about that plane?
Well, I didn't recognize it as a plane at first. It looked to me like a charred piece of metal, and I had thought that there was an explosion from within the Trade Center, so I thought what I was seeing was a piece of the Trade Center falling because the sheath of the Trade Center is metal. But since I've learned that the first explosion was caused by a plane crashing into the tower, I've assumed that what I saw was a piece of fuselage that was falling, and the plume of flame I saw shoot out would be consistent with jet fuel exploding.
So you really have no idea of how large a plane the first one was?
No, I didn't even know that was a plane. I learned that from the news media. But I definitely saw the second plane. I heard it sound, and I saw it streaming in from the south. I watched it crash into the Trade Center.
You said you're very afraid, and understandably so. They're not evacuating your building?
No. I'm going to leave on my own, but I haven't heard any decisions made to that effect.
Can you see the ground from your vantage point?
Oh, yes.
Talk to me about the scene on the ground, if you would.
Well, it's completely devoid of vehicles and people. The entire street is totally littered with paper and smoke, and several vehicles are on fire on Liberty Street in the parking lot where either fuel or pieces of the plane fell onto them after crashing into the Trade Center. There's a tremendous number of emergency vehicles here and continuing to arrive. I hear sirens from every side.
All right, Mr. Schneider, you've got a great vantage point. I'm going to ask you to hold on with me for a little while, if you would.
Okay, Mr. Gunn.
I know you're anxious to get out of the building. I'm not going to keep you forever, I promise.
Okay.
But let me ask you to sit tight for a second while I go to Washington, where Jim Stewart is standing by. He's got some official reaction. Jim, good morning. What are you hearing?
Good morning, Bryant. Well, as by happenstance, I was talking to FBI headquarters at the moment this explosion took place. They saw it occur as we saw it occur, the second explosion, rather, and their reaction was the same as everyone else. Number one, they noticed the clear weather there. Number two, they noticed what appeared to be, in their eyes, a deliberate attempt to crash the aircraft into the World Trade Center. Right now, they are trying to determine whether, in fact, it was deliberate. They have no information they can share at the moment, and I get the sense that they're in the same mode that we are, simply their mouth is agape trying to figure out what's going on.
Jim, let me interrupt for just 1 second. I'm looking at a report that the FBI is investigating reports of a plane hijacking. Did you have any news of that?
No, we don't.
No confirmation of that whatsoever?
We have no confirmation.
Is anybody even there discussing that?
No, the only discussion that's been going on here, Brian, is that the World Trade Center has obvious symbolic value. It's been a target before of terrorism, and frankly, it would not surprise the FBI or anyone in national security if it was a target again.
Sometimes the obvious leads you to a conclusion. We're looking at two crashes, 18 minutes apart, into an obvious target, a building that has never been hit with a plane before on a clear day. What do the intelligence people there say about that?
The intelligence community for some time has been warning in a steady drumbeat, Bryant, that Osama bin Laden has not been heard from now, frankly, since the beginning of the year, the USS Cole incident, rather, and they've been wondering when and if he will strike again, and they only believed it was a matter of time. And I believe that today that is going to be their first suspicion. But we have no confirmation of that. I must underline, there's no confirmation that this is a terrorist attack, number one, or number two, that it's Osama bin Laden involvement. But I can tell you right now, that is what they are thinking. That is the working premise, and we'll just have to see as the day unfolds what they discover.
Jim, as we sit here at 9:17, does the FBI have any choice but to sit and watch this on television?
I have never heard such a gasp of astonishment as I heard speaking to the FBI headquarters this morning when they saw what we saw, the explosion at the World Trade Center, the second explosion, and the smoke coming out of it. It reminded me and them of Oklahoma City. There's pure astonishment, I can tell you, at FBI headquarters this morning, and they are trying to find out the facts just as we are. Right now, they don't have any.
And as you noted, Jim, this has been a target before. Back on February 26, 1993, a terrorist act at the World Trade Center killed 6 and injured more than 1,000 others. Do you know whether or not the FBI had received any warnings about attacks on domestic soil?
You know, frankly, no, and it's a question that we ask every day. I asked as recently as yesterday of the intelligence community what was the latest on terrorism threats in the United States, whether any intercept had been picked up, whether there was any current fear here that the next target would be within the United States. The answer came back no. They were still anticipating that the next strike against American interests would be overseas somewhere. Those are the most vulnerable targets. Today would clearly be some evidence that that's not the case at all. In clear weather, as you pointed out, what appears to be a deliberate attack into the heart of the financial district in New York City. You can't pick a more explicit message to send to America if you're a terrorist than what happened today. I stress again, though, this is pure speculation, but it is speculation right now by the people who are going to have to solve this crime, if in fact it is one, Brian.
That's a good point, Jim. At this point, it is pure speculation. The only thing we can tell you is we are looking at a very clear day in Manhattan on this Tuesday morning. We are looking at 2 towers of 110 stories in height that are on fire right now, that have absorbed 2 impacts with 18 minutes apart. Certainly, it's a little more than it would be an amazing coincidence, I think we should say.
Bryant,
go ahead.
We've just been told that, and this should not be come as a surprise, it's standard procedure by the FBI. Their rapid deployment team from the Washington field office, this is a group of people that they send to major disaster and terrorist incidents, such as the twin embassy bombings in Africa. They have now been dispatched to New York. I have reason to believe, too, that some members of the HRT, that's the hostage rescue team, have been put on alert. We don't have any word yet that they would be sent. And these are standard procedures that would take place anytime a major terrorist incident occurs. But this would be a group of approximately 60 experts, people who are very good at picking up the bits of debris that we've been talking about falling on the streets of New York and turning that into evidence should they discover that this, in fact, was a deliberate act.
Jim, and if you don't know the answer to this, I understand, so I apologize up front for asking you. But do you know whether or not there are any federal offices in the World Trade Center at the upper levels?
I don't know that there are. I do not believe that there are. I believe that the FBI and the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms people, are all closer to Midtown. But I don't know the precise answer to that.
So, in fact, if the buildings were targeted intentionally, this would be more symbolic than a direct attack on the federal government or its employees. Jim, let me ask you to sit tight for a second. I understand, Mr. Davis, you're back with me on the line?
I am.
And Miss Renault, you're also back on the line?
Sure.
Mr. Davis, bring us up to speed. What are you seeing? Anything changed?
No, but the smoke is getting thicker, and I can see flames from some of the windows on the first tower. My view of the second tower is somewhat obstructed.
Where are you, 50th and 5th?
I'm 50th and 5th.
Yeah. The officials there are anxious to in any way evacuate your building? Or is this just a normal work day?
I've been told that Rockefeller Center is putting into effect security measures, but we have not been told to evacuate.
Okay. And Miss Renault, what are you seeing right now?
From the southeast tower, there are still flames coming out of the north side of the building. It may be just my perspective, but it looks like something could be sticking out of that. Also, it looks like on the northwest tower that there's possibly, the fire and everything could have moved up because it seems to be that there's smoke coming out higher floors on the building.
You say there appears to be something out. That would be the second aircraft?
Yes.
The one at the lower level?
Yes.
And what actually do you see?
It just, there's an object that doesn't fit with the line of the building that seems to be protruding, and that's what's on fire.
We're getting a look at the building right now, and I must say the smoke seems to be obscuring our view enough so that we can't identify it. We're re-racking the tape right now. You see encircled there off on the right-hand side of your screen, this is the second plane. Obviously, the first plane has already collided with the top of the southernmost building, and now here comes the second plane. And you see, making no moves to evade the second tower, and then crashing into the second one. Ms. Renault, let me ask you to sit tight. Mr. Davis, you too, for a second. I want to go to Washington, where White House correspondent Bill Plant is standing by. Bill, what are you hearing on your end?
Brian, we're hearing that the president will have a statement to make shortly. He is in Florida this morning. He was supposed to do an educational event with children to push his education bill. We understand that that event has been canceled. There was a senior staff meeting here this morning. Nobody seems quite to know exactly what's going on. The National Security Council said earlier that it had heard nothing unusual. This was after the first airplane impact. We will hear from the president, we think, very shortly, to hear what he has to say and see what, if anything, they know about this, which appears to be so deliberate.
Bill, I asked Jim this earlier, and again, I apologize if you're not in a position to shed any more light on it, but do you know whether or not officials there at the White House had been forewarned that there was an imminent attack, or there was a heightened sense of alert? We're aware there had been for some time a heightened sense of alert throughout the Mideast, but I'm talking about domestically.
Well, we do know that there has been a heightened sense of alert. We do know that there have been a number of threats. There are always threats received. They have tended to take them recently a bit more seriously. But it does not appear, and I hesitate to make this for certain, but it does not appear that they had any advance warning that anything was going to happen today.
Again, this is all speculative, Bill, but are officials there working on the assumption that two planes crashing in the Twin Towers 18 minutes apart on a clear day, not an accident?
Hard to believe that they would think otherwise, but at the moment they seem just as mystified as we are. And as I said before, we do expect a statement from the president, who is down in Florida, sometime within the next few minutes.
All right, Bill, let me go back to Teresa Renault. Ms. Renault, I'm sorry I'd cut you off earlier, and I may again, by the way, if the president is ready to speak, but give us what you see from your vantage point again, if you would.
From the southeast building.
You're in Chelsea, correct?
Yes, I am. On the 14th floor, we have a 360-degree view. It's completely clear, straight shot. We have on the southeast building, on the north side, looks like the north corner, about the middle of the building. It is still very much in flames and smoke rising from that. I can't see as many flames coming out of the northwest building. It looks like, though, that the north side of the building and the west side of the northwest building have been opened up and still very much covered in smoke in the tops of the buildings.
And that the northwest side would be the building that absorbed the first impact,
That's
the higher of the two.
That's correct.
From our vantage point, it appears that the higher hole is a larger hole. Is that what you see?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I don't know if that's just a difference in perspective from where I am, because that is the closer building
Certainly
to me.
It's staggered. You're correct.
Yes.
But we had heard an earlier report, unconfirmed, that the first plane appeared to be a 737. The plane we saw, absent any perspective, seemed to be a smaller plane.
I would say the explosion upon impact was much larger on the first hit than the second.
You heard both?
Yes, I saw the impact on the second building. I saw the explosion come from the building on the first one.
Mm-hmm. You're at Chelsea and 14th.
Yes. It's like a 16th and 8th Avenue.
Yeah, I'm sorry, on the 14th floor. I apologize.
Yeah,
not on 14th. You're a considerable ways away. Any effort there to evacuate your building?
Not at this point. No.
Mr. Davis, tell us the mood where you are. We were talking to a gentleman earlier who was in a high-rise closer to the World Trade Center, and he was genuinely afraid, and understandably so.
Well, it is shocking. Very shocking to have witnessed. Perhaps we can be somewhat more sympathetic to what Israel is suffering at the moment.
But they have not moved people out of your building?
No.
You said here at Rockefeller Center that security actions have been put into place. What do those entail?
I really do not know, but we have not been told to evacuate.
All right. Jim Stewart, back in Washington, you still with us? Oh, Bill, you're still with us, right?
I am, Brian.
What word are you hearing on when the president's going to come forward?
We were just told that the president will have something to say down in Florida any minute. He is in Florida. We believe that his education event, which was scheduled for this morning, has been canceled. But the White House is saying that the president will have something to say. Then he'll leave Florida and come right back to Washington, Brian.
Bill, had his people, Condi Rice, Colin Powell, his security people, his foreign affairs people, ever discussed this kind of a scenario?
I don't know for certain, but I would be very surprised if they had not talked about it. This kind of what-if disaster planning is a staple in Washington, and particularly at senior levels. And I think that these sorts of things are gamed, examined, and talked about, and everyone hopes they will never happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, in this case, it would seem to have gone against hopes. Again, let's bring everyone up to speed. As best we can tell, wow, we just had another view of the second plane going in. As best we can tell, at 8:45 this morning, an aircraft plowed into the uppermost levels of one of the Twin Towers. An eyewitness has defined that plane, has told us that plane was a 737, but that is unconfirmed. And then moments later, 18 minutes later, a second aircraft, the one you saw just there, plowed into the other Twin Tower.